of dangling thread attached to your clothing. How many of you have a tendency to just grab a hold of it and give it a quick jerk? How many of them, huh? Well, I always figured, this is the way I always figured. You know, go in my pocket here, this cup. In fact, I had one on the hem of my jacket this morning. I always figured if I grabbed a hold of it, if I jerked it hard enough and quick enough, it wouldn't hurt anything. Wrong. After 45 years, or almost 45 years of marriage, Donna pretty much has me broken of jerking little dangling pieces of thread anymore. The reason being, she's had to repair the results several different times. From a seam starting to pull apart to a quarter of a pocket coming loose on my shirt to, you name it. But I still can hardly resist pulling on a dangling piece of thread. I can hardly resist it. Heck, sometimes I don't have a pair of scissors with me, you know? To cut it off. But you know, when you do that, instead of freeing yourself from one annoying little thread, you now have maybe a major clothing malfunction. You see, folks, it's the little things that get us in big trouble. Life doesn't usually present us with big temptations or grandiose sins. Instead, we constantly encounter little temptations that can easily slip under the threshold of our levels of acceptance and tolerance. I'll just have to clean it. Doesn't make much difference. So I'll just let it slide this time. You know. And these little, apparently insignificant temptations, they nibble away at us. And they gradually compromise our integrity in each little bite that they take. Our moral failure does not usually come from enormous, glaring misdeeds. Things like murdering or stealing or cheating on a spouse. Our ethical standards are not so much ripped apart, they're ripped up by the roots through such obvious sins. Instead, we're more likely to experience the gradual decay of our human moral fiber through the insidious work of the little things. A little piece of thread here, a piece of thread there. Little things like holding on to our anger, backbiting, selfishness, and eventually our standards of acceptable behavior slip lower and lower until we can talk ourselves into almost anything, as long as it's to our benefit. And one way that we convince ourselves of the inconsequential nature of the little tramplings on the mandates of the Ten Commandments is to look at the violence and the destruction that seems to be escalating all around us. Senseless, violent crimes are splattered across the news every night. The week when we were down in Morgantown staying with our friends, Morgantown's Dominion Post newspaper ran as their feature story for 3 days the murder of a 16-year-old university high school student by 2 of her friends. Their response when caught? We didn't want to be friends with her anymore. The atrocities of war and the incidents of ethnic cleansings continue to spread like plagues across the country, where we see how cultural covetousness has led to the rape of the earth and the wanton abuse of our precious natural resources. But each of these terrible acts can be traced back to a tiny, trifling beginning. The rooting out of one of God's commandments in favor of some self-directed focus. The most frightening trend, one of the most frightening trends that now predicted by sociologists, and we're seeing it, is the rise of a new kind of criminal. A super criminal or a super predator. Statistics and surveys suggest that our culture is now producing individuals so permanently psychotic, so violent, so morally bankrupt that they are capable of committing the worst crimes for the least of reasons. These super predators think nothing of murdering another over a petty disagreement. It's just a good way to win an argument. These super predators think nothing of spraying an entire playground full of children with gunfire in order to get an enemy. The bystanders are simply disposable. These super predators think nothing of burning down a house or a business of a rival to even the score. But the most terrifying thing about this new breed of super criminals that our culture has created is their age. The most sociopathic, conscienceless, bloodthirsty, remorseless killers, thieves, and rapists are typically between the ages of 12 and 18. Sometimes even younger. And the terrifying generation of super predators, although basically indiscriminate in picking their victims, prey most heavily on their own generation. Children are massacring and raping children. Where do these sociological monsters come from? How does a child become a cold-blooded killer at the age of 12? I think we all may have to take some responsibility. You see, children can't raise themselves, although they are increasingly being forced to do so, which is part of the problem. Children are dependent upon parents, a community, and a culture to teach them right from wrong. When we fail to accomplish that basic feat, we leave them stranded in a moral wasteland with nothing except their own wants and desires. And that is dangerous. We are teaching our children every time we endorse violence as a form of cheap entertainment. We are teaching our children every time we accept grasping greed as striving for success. We are teaching our children every time we depersonalize the poor and the hungry and the homeless by making them into statistics. We are teaching our children every time we settle for a quick fix instead of solving a problem. We are teaching our children every time we shut out the cries of others in order to better focus on our own problems. We are teaching our children every time we use and discard friends, co-workers, or family members as though they were disposable diapers. Our little things are stacking up into a mountain of broken loyalties, self-centered needs, and loveless relationships. All the while, our children and grandchildren are watching and learning and perfecting their attitudes. Consider some time ago in Seattle, two 15-year-old boys and two 14-year-old girlfriends decided to ditch school one day. Missing the bus, these kids simply carjacked an automobile parked at the bus stop. It was of no consequence to them that sitting in the back seat of the car, strapped in their seats, sat an 8-month-old and a 2-year-old. kids sped away with, even as the frantic mother was grasping hold of the back door handle of the car. It took 5 hours to find the abandoned car. Thankfully, with a hot, frightened, hungry baby still sitting in it. Excuse me. The families of these young criminals protested that they were really good kids. We don't have to look very far from home to find the Steubenville rape case. 2 teenage boys raped a 16-year-old girl as other teenagers looked on and videotaped it and put it out on social media. Guess what? These are not good kids. These are children we have raised, all of us, in a cultural hothouse with an atmosphere that is commandment-free or at least commandment optional. And the reluctance of our churches to proclaim from the rooftops these commandments of stone that are written into our hearts makes the church an accomplice in raising up a generation of super predators. The 10 Commandments don't intentionally go into specific details of situations and punishment because it is intended to become a structure, the structure of our soul, the spine of our being. The mandates of love and loyalty, respect and honor, justice and worthiness that they impart must stand inside each one of us, ready to direct us when we face trouble and temptation. When we let our spiritual backbone gradually decay, when we fail to feed our bones the calcium of faithfulness, it grows so weak and so poor that with the least bit of pressure, they shatter to dust. It takes only the weight of a little thing to bring us down. We become formless and faithless, easily shaped into whatever mold happens to stand before us at the moment. Everybody knows the 10 Commandments. Maybe not. They either become an integral part of our lives, our homes, our work, and our family. They either become that integral part to the point that we become walking tablets, or they become so eaten away by the little things that when they collapse, or we collapse, in dust and ashes. What can the church do? It has to do much more than arguing about whether the 10 Commandments should be posted in a classroom or courthouse. That's easy. The hard thing is to be walking tablets of stone. People who make the commandments visible in their lives every day. First, it requires us not to let the little things tear us down. Then it dares us to go into the community and work together with teachers and nurses and social workers and to help families before they're in crisis, and of all the social issues which our denominations are struggling with. Why have we not embraced this one? Why have we not reached out to a generation raised without moral moorings? Why can't our churches become wholeness centers that minister to troubled families with a deep spiritual base? You see, folks, the church is the only community on earth that can confront the evil one. For it is the only community on earth to whom the keys of the kingdom have been given. The gates of hell can prevail against anything and everything but the church. In the church's brandishing of the 10 Commandments, and I'm not talking about us taking them and waving them around, but posting them out in the street, in front of the church. In our brandishing, in our living the 10 Commandments daily, in what we say and what we do, in making those 10 commandments visible, we're not offering this culture a moral milestone, but a lifelong lodestone. We can do it. We can do it. If the church won't, who will? Who will do it if we don't? Pray with me. So God, the giver of life, the giver of commandments, strengthen we your people, that in the living of our lives, we might need those commandments for others to see.